Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
לכל זמן ועת לו כל חפץ תחת השמיים, עת ללדת ועת למות, עת לטעת ועת לעקור נטוע, עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות, עת לבכות ועת לשחוק, עת ספוד ועת רקוד, עת להשליך אבנים ועת כנוס אבנים. עת לחבוק ועת לרחוק מחבק, עת לבקש ועת לאבד, עת לשמור ועת להשליך, עת לקרוע ועת לתפור, עת לחשות ועת לדבר. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to laugh and a time to weep. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to throw and a time to gather. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak. At this time, I'd like to call upon Rabbi David Cantor, Congregation Bethel, recite the 23rd Psalm and say a few words.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo exar. A Psalm of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Binot deshe yarbitzeni alme menuchot yenachaleni. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me to water in places of repose. Nahavshi yeshovev, yancheni v'ma'aglet tzedek lema'an shemaho. He renews my life. He guides me in right paths, as befits his name. Gam ki elech begetza mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi, shiftacha umishanatecha chema yenachamuni. Though I walk through a valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Ta'arok lefanai shochan neged sararai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my drink is abundant. Ahach tov v'chesed yirdafuni ko yemechayai, v'shavti bevet Adonai le'orech yamim. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long years. We gather at times like these because memory is important. Our friend Harvey used to live in the world, in the physical world with us. He was someone we could talk to, someone we could see, someone whose presence we could feel. And now his existence has been transformed into an existence that exists only in our minds, only in our memories. He's someone that we recall, someone we think of, someone that we tell stories about. And the mechanism to help us to make to help him to make this transition of existence is by telling stories. And so we gather to share stories about his life. And in this way, we give comfort. Comfort to his family, his friends, his community, and also comfort to him. Because although we may die physically, indeed all of us must, so long as people keep telling stories about us, we will live forever.
On a holiday like Sukkot, it's customary not to give a eulogy. However, we would be remiss not to speak about the wonderful life that Harvey had. Interestingly enough, Sukkot has another name, Zeman Simchatenu, the holiday of rejoicing. Although today we are not rejoicing about Harvey's loss, we are going to celebrate his life. So I'd like to call up family members to come up and tell their stories, say their words. We'll begin with Harvey's daughter, Penny.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. And you're all here because you either knew my dad or you know someone who loved my dad. And you may have known my dad in one capacity or another, but I want to tell you a little more about Harvey. And I just kind of have a bunch of bullet points, and I'm going to tell you different things about my dad. First of all, Harvey, I want to say is, but I guess was, kind and compassionate, easygoing, and soft-spoken. My dad was not a big talker, but when he did speak, people would listen. He was very smart and handsome and always well-groomed, well-dressed, and he always smelled good. My dad loved music, especially Frank Sinatra and the big band music and show tunes and classics. And when he was in the Cooper ICU, we found his old iPod. We had to train the nurses how to use it. You push a button and you circle the dial because they didn't know how they kept trying to touch the screen. And he had thousands of his favorite music from Disney to Sinatra. And when he was asleep and even when he wasn't alert, he would tap his fingers and he would tap his toes. So we knew he was listening. And the hospital staff, from the medical team to the housekeeping staff, oftentimes would linger. I once saw a janitor. When I came in, there was a janitor in his room with his mop. And he actually brought the mop over to my dad so he could use it as a microphone, singing. And then after the janitor walked out, my dad, he looked at me, smiled, and he rolled his eyes because he couldn't say anything. And he thought it was funny. I know he did. As a teenager, he would record himself singing to Frank Sinatra at Steel Pier, right, in Atlantic City. And sometimes he'd play that for us. Very proud of his recording debut. Harvey was a leader. Ever since I can remember, my dad was always a strong, kind, and natural leader. He was the Cub Scout pack leader and the Boy Scout leader and the president of our synagogue for so many terms and my entire childhood. Every term, he was voted as the president. Or I don't think anyone else ran against him. He was president for 10 years, 12. He always managed to find his place at the helm of every ship and on the board of every organization in which he was involved. He immediately took a leadership role at their beach condo in Margate, becoming newsletter editor and social planner. And when they moved to their current home in Marlton, he immediately joined their board and served for 20 years in almost every capacity, from president to his current role as treasurer of the Village Greens and social planner. And he was also currently serving as treasurer of the JCC Couples Club. And then just a few months ago, he became the treasurer of the South Jersey Men's Club. And when he told me this, I said, Dad, you're 85 years old. Why do you need to be the treasurer of 3 organizations? Shouldn't you be slowing down? And he just laughed and said, I like it. It keeps me busy. Harvey was an avid traveler and a hero. I don't know if everybody knows this. My dad was a hero. I'm going to tell you why. Their many trips included Australia, New Zealand, Italy, France, Israel, Prague, Turkey, London. Too many cruises to count, but one travel story stands out. While vacationing in Jamaica in 1980, Category 5 Hurricane Allen ferociously made a bullseye, landing directly where they were staying. And all the planes were vacated from the island. Nobody could leave because they were trapped in their hotel. And when the ocean came rushing into the stairwells, they all moved to the top floor. And when the waves crashed the door down and the water began to rise, one brave custodian was sucked out to sea. And another wave came, and my dad ran after him and pulled him in, risking his own life and becoming a true hero and a Jamaica Island legend. Not only were they offered a free future stay at the hotel, but they were told, when you save a man's life, you own that man for the rest of his life. So they offered to have the man and his 10 children flown to the U.S. to come and live with my parents. They never went back, right? You never went back for your free trip. I know you didn't. He was featured in the local news and was deemed a local Jamaican hero. And then, of course, there was the engine fire on the way home from Italy, which resulted in a very risky emergency landing in Gander, Newfoundland, where they spent the night on the floor of a very tiny Gander airport with the other 200 passengers, just thankful to be alive. And in my teenage years, there's another hurricane story. I'm going to leave that to Harris, right? We went through another hurricane together. In my teenage years, my parents had a house in the Poconos, a little house, and when they wanted a break from their travels, they would retreat to our little house in the Poconos. But the adventures didn't stop there. My dad, an avid photographer, once saw a bear go down the driveway, and he had to take a photo of that bear. So he slowly, quietly, with his camera, began to chase the bear. And as I remember the story, at some point in the chase, the bear turned around and then began to chase my dad. And like a cartoon character, my dad was seen running at full speed with his camera flying around his neck back down the driveway. I think it might have been a deer, but in my mind, it was a bear. Party planner. Ever since I can remember, Dad loved to throw parties. And all his milestone birthdays were marked with some type of party or big celebration, including a DJ or a band with hats and swag. And we always did the mummer strut with umbrellas. And at the Village Greens, Dad formed the holiday choir. And when his voice became too hoarse over the years, he became the maestro, conducting the annual holiday concert celebration. If there was ever a party or celebration in any of their circles, you can be sure Harvey was a planner or otherwise was in the center of it. Purpose. My dad had a love for life, a strong will to live, and he always had purpose. He loved taking care of my mom. He was always by her side, always holding her arm, driving her everywhere. And he loved to cook, and he loved to make soup, and he would freeze containers for us. And just before he had his stroke, he made vegetable soup, which is in my freezer. I can't bring myself to use it, but one day I will. I have a little more. Is that okay? Father, Dad loved his family first and foremost. Growing up, my brother and I were his world. When I was little, he had an office in our basement. He didn't go very far for work. And as far as I knew, he was always home. I'd see him for breakfast before I went to school. And every day, promptly at 5 o'clock, we had family dinner. And when he went to see his clients, he always came home with stuff. I don't know if it's because they loved him so much or they just couldn't pay their bills. But all I know is my dad would come home with toys from the toy vendor and candy and ice cream from the ice cream man and knishes and big cookies from Hesh's bakery. I was Daddy's girl in every sense of the word. And there's nothing he wouldn't do or get for me. And when the Arco gas station at 2nd Street Pike and County Line Road had dolls around the world, you'd go to the gas station and every fill up you got a new doll. You'd have to buy it. Every time he came home from a fill up with a new doll, I loved them so much and I just couldn't wait each time for a new one. So next time he went and he came home with all the dolls. He bought all of them because he didn't want me to have to wait. And when I was at summer camp, I got the biggest packages filled with toys and candy for everybody to share. And he was grandfather. When Jake was born, he very quickly and naturally fell into the role of doting, loving, and devoted grandfather. He loved all his grandkids more than you can imagine. He was the perfect caretaker. I would jokingly call him the nanny because of how much he helped us. And after I nursed, when I had babies, he would take his grandsons and burp them and change their diapers so I could get some rest. His 3 grandsons, followed by his 2 granddaughters, were his pride and joy, and he proudly displayed their pictures wherever he could. And when the dogs came along, he loved them as well. Friend, to know my dad was truly to love him. If you were lucky to be among his numerous circles of friends, you knew what a special friend he was. He was likable and such an easygoing friend. Harvey was a great listener, too. He would support his friends and family. And when I would call him with any issue or problem, he would always tell me he supports me and he loves me. And he would always tell me I'm doing the right thing, even when I was wrong. And if I ever had a disagreement or a falling out with a friend, he would tell me it's their loss. They were lucky to have had me as a friend. My dad was my biggest fan. He was my biggest fan and my biggest hero. My best friend, growing up, I had a best friend across the street since I was 4 years old, Gail, and she wasn't able to make it today. But she asked me to read a few words. She said, Penny, your dad was a sweet, kind, quiet man who put up with all of our shenanigans. His home office was right next to where we played, and he didn't even care if we built a snow fort, and all his clients had to walk through the snow fort to get into the office. He put up with us, and he bought fancy floats with cups for the pool, and we just used them and would jump over them and try to fit 3 or 4 people. He didn't care. He allowed us to be kids. He loved seeing us have fun. He had dinner with his family every night at the same time. He was a devoted husband and father, and he was always nice to me. So on Sunday, July 30th, in the middle of the night, life for all of us changed in the blink of an eye. After a typical busy day, complete with lunch with friends at the country club, a card game, and a movie with my mom, my parents went to bed, and around 3:30 a.m., my dad got out of bed and fell, having a massive stroke. He was rushed to Cooper ICU, where they successfully removed a large clot from his brain. He kept defying so many odds along the way. First, they said he might not survive the surgery. And when he did, we were told he would likely be paralyzed on one side, which he wasn't. His speech was garbled, but we were told that could come back with time and with therapy. He was the perfect patient in the ICU. He did everything they asked him. He never complained. He became a favorite among the nurses and the staff there. If there was a board in the ICU, he would be the president, or maybe at least the treasurer or the social planner or the newsletter editor. He was fighting hard. He did everything that was asked of him. And when they told us he'd need a breathing tube several times, he would proceed to breathe on his own just to prove them wrong. But ultimately, the stroke caused respiratory issues that he could not overcome. And although he continued to fight and got weaned off his breathing machine, the stroke caused too much permanent and irreversible damage to be able to proceed to the next steps of recovery. And I'm not sure what life will be like without my dad. I don't know what it will look like for any of us. He will be sorely missed by his family, friends, his community, and by all the lives he's touched over his 85 years. I will miss our conversations and our visits. Holidays and gatherings will never be the same. I hope I will continue to hear his soft voice cheering me on and encouraging me as I move through life's challenges and celebrations. I will always picture him with his warm, loving smile and his kind, gentle face, always happy to be with his family, his kids, his grandkids, his granddogs. I love you, Dad.
Harvey's son, Harris.
Tough act to follow, huh? It's always been that way. First, I want to thank you all for being here today, in person or virtually, to celebrate the life of my father, Harvey London. He was an extraordinary individual who touched every one of us here. And I'd like to tell just a few stories to demonstrate some of the qualities that made him so exceptional. As I write this, I'm sitting at his desk. My dad has had an office in his house since as long as I can remember. And I spent many hours on the other side of this desk, talking, working, joking, and learning from him. In the days following his stroke a couple of months ago, I needed to pay some bills, sort out some of the business of running their household. And so I sat down on this side of the desk for the very first time. A strange but very palpable energy ran through my body as I sat in his chair. And I began to see, his life from that side of the desk. Surrounded by his papers, certificates, pictures, books, articles, pens, pencils. Seriously, there's like this much space on that desk to work, okay? It was, and of course his trusty 10-key adding machine, which still had the paper tape of his last calculations sticking out of the top. I felt his presence, and it guided me through the task before me. It felt so natural and so obvious. And that's because he was my original teacher about really anything business related. Most of you know that he was a CPA, and he ran a solo practice of small business clients. He did everything from monthly accounting, write-ups, to journal entries, to financial statements, to tax return preparation. And he was a trusted business advisor, as well as a good friend to those clients. Once I was old enough to recognize number sequences, he had me sorting checks so he could more easily reconcile bank statements. He showed me all of his spreadsheets, and by the way, these are 13-column paper, if you know, you know, and taught me all of the basics of accounting before I was out of middle school. During high school, he gave me 2 clients that were my responsibility. Every month, he would hand over their shoebox of records, and I would do the work, hand him back the completed product. And I once asked him why he only paid me $25 a month for this, when I saw in their checkbook that he was billing $150 for the service. He replied with a twinkle in his eyes, "When I work for you, you can pay me $25 and you can keep the rest." Another lesson in how to run a business. His business sense, incomparable organizational skills, and genuinely kind, upbeat, and enthusiastic personality took him very far in life. There are many organizations and groups that have benefited from his intuitive sense of keeping track of money, organizing people and resources, and just making things happen. I'm just going to talk about a few of them. You've heard Penny kind of go through this list, so some of this will be repetitious, but it'll be kind of sort of from my perspective. When I was 7, I joined the Cub Scouts. One of his clients was the Cub Master at the time and convinced my dad to come on board as treasurer. He quickly took control of their finances, and as a result, we had money to spend on events and trips. When the Cub Master stepped down, my dad stepped up and became the leader of the pack. When it came time to planning a camping trip, we went to a camping supply shop to get gear and provisions. For those of you who knew us then, just try to picture this. Now, my dad was not an outdoorsy type. So he asked the salesman what we needed. And we bought pretty much anything that one could possibly need on a camping trip. And we schlepped all that stuff out to the campsite. And we bought most of it home in its original packaging. Shortly after Cub Scouts, my dad became very involved in the synagogue. Starting as religious chairman, he quickly followed that same path to treasurer and then president of the synagogue. Again, he took an almost insolvent organization from the red into the black, and the synagogue prospered under his leadership. He hated the way the annual high holiday pledge was traditionally conducted, by kind of going around the room and people standing up and announcing your donation to the entire congregation. So he instituted what he called the silent pledge, where you fold back a tab on a card privately. And to this day, every synagogue I've been at the holidays, that's the way they do it. At some point, they bought a condominium in Margate, and once again, he found a way to get involved with the financial management of it. Of course, the financials of that condo association were severely mismanaged, and once again, he righted the ship and found money to sponsor all kinds of events and parties for the residents. After my parents sold their home in Huntington Valley, they bought a home in the Village Greens community where they've now lived for the past 20 years or so. Right after settlement, before they even moved in, he attended a homeowners association board meeting. And after they found out what he did and all of the organizations he'd work with, they asked him to immediately join the board as finance chairman. Of course, he dug right into that role in this relatively brand new community and started to make things happen. Once the treasurer retired, he moved into that position, and then president and treasurer. But he always made sure that the management company was on top of their game and was providing the best possible service for the residents. He organized a comprehensive social agenda, including holiday parties, trips, a choir, ice cream socials, and dozens of other events. Under his leadership, they became a Gold Star community, which I understand recognizes it as a place that promotes community participation, maintains fiscal responsibility, and just in general improves their residents' quality of life. I started out by telling you that my dad was an exceptional person. From these stories, I hope you can see the passion and dedication he had for using his talent and personality to benefit the groups he cared about. But as much energy, care, and love as he gave to his friends and neighbors in these groups, the most important group to him was his family. He was a devoted and loving husband to my mom. He started every day by making her a cup of coffee and laying out her pills for the day. He was always by their side when they walked anywhere, even when only recently it was to help her keep her balance. He was her best friend, and they thrived together. And he was an awesome father. As busy as he was with his business and the groups that he worked with, he was always there for me and Penny. He passed on those values of leadership, community engagement, kindness, thoughtfulness, and hard work to both of us. It's no coincidence that Penny and I have sought out positions of leadership in our occupational and social lives. He was always there for me. He not only made time to talk to me, but he made time to listen. I could always count on him for advice, and when my emotions got the best of me, he knew exactly how to ground me to reality in a calm and soothing way. I don't know what the afterlife looks like, but I do know that once God gets to know my dad, the books will be balanced, there'll be money to do everything, and he'll have that place running like a machine in no time. So get ready, Grand Architect. You just got the guy who can make it all happen. I love you, Dad. I miss you every day.
Harvey's grandson, Jake.
Thank you all for attending. It means so much to my family. Yeah. So I'm not much to say. I don't say a whole lot of words, but I'll try to make this meaningful. So to all of you, this kind, gentle, loving man was Harvey London. To me, he was Bop. Why was he Bop? Well, as his first grandson, they try to introduce you to your grandparents, and he wanted to be called Grandpop. And as like the 1 or 2 year old child I couldn't say all that. All I could get out was Bop, and that's just what we went with, Bop. Kept calling him that. When I had 2 younger brothers, they would call him that. 2 cousins, they would call him that. So he was just known as Bop. Is that what he originally wanted to be called? Probably not. But if it put a smile on his grandchildren's face, if it was what we made us happy to call him, he was happy to be called that. Our Bop was the kindest soul that would always put others before himself, and that was especially true for his grandchildren. I remember spending weekends at his Margate Beach house, spending all day on the beach, playing in the sand with him. Then at night, he'd take me to the boardwalk, get ice cream, and go on all the rides. I'll remember the times he babysat us, as 3 rowdy boys, so that my parents could have at least a moment of relief. I'll remember all the times he came to visit us, even as his old age, made it more difficult for him getting around. It was never an obstacle for him to come and see us. I'll remember the dogs. When we got our dogs, they'd always gravitate towards him. Dogs can sense, kindness in people, And he was always the first person they would want to go see. Like, they just knew this is a kind, gentle man. I'll even remember him doing our taxes, even after he was supposedly retired. Even didn't matter, he was all the new, tax stipulations, whatever, he'd still do it because he loved his family. And I'll remember him always having a smile on his face as he did all of this for us. You were the best bop a grandson could ever ask for. The joy you brought to the world will never be forgotten. I love you so much.
Harvey's grandson, Tyler.
As my brother Jake just said, to most of you guys he was Harvey, but to us he was Bop. And as Jake said, the origins of the name isn't as exciting as you might think. It was more so just the most he could say at the time when he tried to pronounce his name. But, the name sort of stuck. And I feel like, as I was born, my older brother was born, we continued using the name. And even though it might sound a little silly, I think there's more of a deeper meaning to the name than it might entail. And how I would explain it is the name Bop may sound a little goofy, but it's somewhat comforting. And, if you know someone named Bop, just saying the name will make you smile, and it's just someone that you can hug. And I feel like that's the embodiment of Bop, through hugs, through smiles, and through love. And it's not just me and my family. His presence would make everyone smile in the room. It was basically contagious. And between his personality and his passion for helping others, he always knew how to make people happy. And speaking of helping others, the lengths he went through to support his friends, his family, his community, as you've heard plenty of times earlier, you could not count the number of times that he's helped people and people have benefited from his generosity. Bop is a one-syllable word, and there are plenty of other one-syllable words you could swap it out with. Kind, father, friend, cook, joy. But I think the most important one to me is love, because he was loving and he was loved, and we'll continue to love him even past. And I love you, Bop.
Harvey's brother, Louis London, or better known as Uncle Louie.
I'm just going to say a few words. I've been known to carry my words a little too long. So these are important things to me as a child, growing up with Harvey as my older brother. Okay, for Harvey and me, it started when I was a child, having a big brother who deeply cared for me and my sister with all his heart and all his soul. He would always take me along with him when he was out with his friends or just hanging around with them. There was a 5-year difference in our age, so you can imagine how his friends might have reacted to that. But he handled it well. He would always say, "This is my kid brother, and I don't mind bringing him here, and I hope you don't mind either." But, at that age, I believe they kind of didn't want the kid brother hanging around with them. You know, I think the experience of that was really beneficial to me as I grew up. You know, in Harvey's life as a child, it was quite musical. He not only played the trombone, the accordion, and the piano, but he had such a strong and amazing and pleasing voice. And he sang beautiful love songs a lot in our house. And some of you might remember La Vie en Rose, Prisoner of Love, Oh My Papa. They were his favorites. When I started high school and my teachers read the roll for the first time and called my name, Lewis London, they immediately asked me if I was Harvey's brother and how fortunate I was. But you know, nothing but accolades were given for my brother, who was a member of the school choir. He played in the orchestra. He also played in the swing band. And he was a reasonable and dedicated student, from everything I heard from all his teachers. I, on the other hand, played sports and never took school that seriously. You know, a person can have a lot of friends, but Harvey was not only a loving brother, but he was like my best friend. There are many words that I could say about my brother. I just wanted to mention a few. He was really actually a funny guy, in all the seriousness about him. He was very kind, gentle, sincere, very dedicated, involving. He was always generous, lending a helping hand when someone needed it. He was very humorous, considerate, and caring. Unfortunately, there was a period in our lives when our families had a bit of a blip and in our relationship. But then we reunited wholeheartedly, and the last 5 years of our lives together with our children and our grandchildren were just amazing. It was just something that I will always, always remember. Just being able to reunite our families. It was just a total feeling of love for all of us. Well, you know, now you've left us, my dear brother, but I will always, always love you. And God bless you. And please rest in peace.
You all spoke so beautifully about your dad, your grandfather, your brother. I just want to add a few thoughts that you shared with me about his life and a few personal words myself. Harvey Allen London Chaim Yitzchak ben Yaakov Visara was born on December 28, 1937, just 85 years young. Born in Philadelphia to Sarah and Jack, a sibling to Louis and Wendy, attended Overbrook High School. In fact, this is where Wilt Chamberlain went to school. And I'm told that Wilt Chamberlain was so tall, he was sitting behind Harvey in class, that he would look over Harvey's shoulder to cheat off and get the answers. After high school, he went to Temple University, got his degree in accounting, became a CPA. And as you heard, he had a great personality and a great mind, wonderful business person, many clients, and was able to see the growth in their businesses. He was well-liked, having many friends, active, loved playing cards, games with men, women, couples, loved going to the theater. Treasurer, as you heard, of many organizations, in particular the community he and Dee lived in for 18 years. President of the community. I understand there's a beautiful write-up in the community newsletter about him. I asked you, Dee, about getting support from your community. And you told me that you were able to get rides from the hospital from people at the community, and one particular person who didn't really know gave you a ride. You thanked him, and he said it was the least that he could do after everything Harvey did in the community. As you heard, he made the community a Gold Star community. Harvey and Dee were married for 63 years. I learned that they met on a double date. He was with another girl. She was with another guy. Neither of them liked their dates, but they liked each other. They dated as teens. Harvey was at Dee's Sweet 16, her prom. And after 6 years, they were engaged, married in a synagogue in Winfield. Dee remembered that she was wearing a white satin dress and Harvey wore a white satin kippah. And at the wedding, the photographer kept blowing fuses. He was trying to take a video. And all one could see on the video was the white dress and the white kippah, none of the faces. Perhaps Harvey, being an amateur photographer, should have taken his own pictures and video at the wedding. Maybe it would have come out better. Harvey loved Dee, and most of the time, he said, "Yes, dear." They did everything together. She even worked with him in his office. They loved traveling together. As you heard before, they went on perhaps 20 cruises. They went on trips to Australia, Paris, Italy, 2 times to Israel, going to Prague. And I like the part where you told me that when you were in London and you were there and the people said, "You're in London." And they said, "No, that's our name, London." You heard about the family vacations, the stories. And for me, being Rabbi Cantor, he's Rabbi Cantor, I'm Rabbi Ann Cantor. Harvey had a beautiful singing voice, a great musical talent, conducting the choir in the community, singing the Hanukkah and Christmas songs. I remember when I was the cantor at Bethel Synagogue in East Windsor, I taught Jake, Eric, and Tyler for their B'nai Mitzvah. I recall Harvey reading Torah at their respective B'nai Mitzvot. But Penny reminded me that Harvey liked the Haftarah trope better than the Torah trope. So he read the Torah in the Haftarah trope. I let it go. Sounded good. When I asked the family to tell me some words or phrases about who he really was, they said a leader, a friend, a thoughtful person, soft-spoken, but a person that people listened to. If he had something to say, it was purposeful. A party lover, liked having a good time, enjoyed the big birthday parties and the special anniversary and all special occasions. A conductor, the most special person, and well-liked. The holiday of Sukkot that we're amidst serves as a reminder of the protection that the Jewish people had while traveling in the wilderness for the 40 years. It was really about God's protection over the people, and I think that God has true workers that become the protectors of our families. Harvey was the protector of your family. He was a faithful person. He worked hard and was thankful to God for all that he had. Most of all, he received much nachat and joy from his family. Dee, Penny, Lenny, Rhonda, Jake, Eric, Tyler, Danielle, Alyssa, Louie, Paula, Jennifer, Melanie, Derek, and Wendy. Know that you are just as important and special to him as he was to all of you. Please keep his legacy going for generations to come. He was a person who earned respect, and he gave respect. He showed his leadership as a brother, as a husband, father, grandfather, and friend. A hard worker who got back as much as he gave and more. A wonderful and caring human being. I know that he will be sadly missed by everyone who knew him. Harvey, may your soul be bound up in the bonds of life eternal. And let us say, Amen. We have come together sharing our sorrow to bid farewell to Harvey London. We recall the blessing of his life, and we thank you, God, for all that was good and true in his life, for the precious memories which shall endure. Eternal God, merciful parent to all, your children are now bowed in grief. They seek light to dispel the dark gloom which threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to those who mourn, for they are in distress. Bless them with your compassion. Ease their burden and sorrows. Send light and peace. For it is written, fear not, as I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will sustain you. And let us say, Amen. Ask everyone to please stand for the memorial prayer that is recited during this season. Elo aslichot, chanun v'rachum, merach hapayim v'rav chesed. Hamtzei chaparat pesha v'akravar yesha, u'menucha nechona, tachar kanefei hashechina, b'malhot, Kiroshim utahorim, Kizohar harakiya, Mi'irim umazhirim, Et Reb Chaim Yitzchak ben Yaakov Esarha, Shalach li olamo, Hana bala rachamim, Zagar lo letova kol zichuyotav, V'tzidkotav yaretzot hachayim, Ufetach lo sharei tzedek v'yorav, Sharei chemla v'chanina, Beseter kenafecha, Hastireu liolamim. Utzror bitzrachayim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato. V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. God exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. The soul of Harvey London has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bonds of life eternal. God, you are now his portion. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. You may be seated. Following the interment at King David Cemetery in Bensalem, the family will be receiving visitors at Penny and Lenny's home, 1357 Brentwood Road in Yardley, Pennsylvania. We're receiving visitors until 4 p.m. today, and then we'll once again resume from 6 to 9. And then tomorrow from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and 6 to 9 p.m. There will be a service at 7:30 p.m. The family will also receive friends Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. and from 6 to 8 p.m. at 11 Geranium Drive in Marlton, New Jersey. Those wishing to make donations in memory of Harvey may do so to Hillel International or International Hillel and Congregation Beth El in Yardley, Pennsylvania.
Folks in this row, begin to head to our cart.